Thank you, Mr. Parke, and ladies and gentlemen. Well, let me start by saying that I am not a venture capitalist. A lot of people have referred to me as a venture capitalist, but I am actually an investment banker. But that doesn't solve my problem. When Professor Puranathi is not here, he called me up to say that he wants me to be a speaker at an social entrepreneurship summit. That seemed like a bit of too much of an oxymoron to ask an investment banker to do and say something which is socially relevant, right? I am one such person. And interestingly, I deal with entrepreneurs all the time, right? We help them grow the business, be part of the journey. But the sad part is I have never been an entrepreneur myself. So what do I talk about social and entrepreneurship in front of all of you? It was a bit of a dilemma. Mr. Parke has made it a little easy for me by saying everyone is an entrepreneur, so I think I can take a little bit of heart from it. And as far as Dr. Mehboob Ali was concerned, he kind of classified people in terms of the risk-taking ability. And the reason maybe I'm not an entrepreneur is maybe I'm not a risk-taker. I'm more of the risk-neutral or a risk-averse kind of a person. But having said that, I think let me try and see what I can do in terms of adding to the wealth of knowledge and information that has already been shared by this group. Going back to what I do and what I know is basically help people raise money when they are part of the entrepreneurial journey and they believe that they need some external capital. Now I know Mr. Bhaskaran said don't go to venture capitalists. It's people like us who actually do the matchmaking between entrepreneurs and venture capitalists. And I'll take the liberty of assuming that you go to venture capitalists because there are many reasons why venture capitalists are actually important. The best source of capital is obviously friends and family and government, and these are basically what you can call as angels. But we deal with situations where angels fear to tread, right? These are too risky, they are too complex, and well beyond maybe the capital investment size of some of these institutions. So really, that's what I will kind of touch upon. And maybe if there are any questions, and if you already have some ideas which requires venture capitalist interventions, very happy to kind of take them subsequently. So let's say you have decided you are on your entrepreneurial journey and you want to approach a venture capitalist or for that matter a private equity investor. So the order of preference, I mean, if you will, there are angels who come in at a very early stage, seed capital stage. Then there are venture capitalists who take a little bit more risk and maybe they put in a lot more money. And then there's private equity. And within private equity, there are two categories. There are early stage, growth stage, and maybe even buyout stage, right? So these are the kind of hierarchy of people who invest behind companies and entrepreneurs, right? Irrespective of whichever category you are going to, right, there are a few things which are very important. Number one is I think you need to have your story right. There has to be a story. Everyone is, and we heard about storytellers. Entrepreneurs also need to bit of a storyteller, right? Because if you are not able to articulate your story, it's very difficult to convince someone to get mesmerized by the story, like the way Chidambaram told us a story and we were all mesmerized, right? So that's really the kind of storytelling which is required, right? So that's very important. And you would have heard this term called BHAG, BHAG. It's the big, hairy, audacious goals that you are going to set for yourself, right? You must have some big, hairy, audacious goals, right? And it could mean different things to different people, but you need to have that BHAG built into your storytelling. That what is the big white space that exists which you are trying to address through your entrepreneurial venture, right? So that's very important. Second is I think the panelists also touched upon something called as innovation, right? I think innovation is absolutely critical when you're thinking of going to someone and saying, hey, please fund my venture, right? And innovation doesn't necessarily always mean technology. To a large extent, it does mean technology in today's context, but that's not the only thing, right? You can have technology, innovation, you can have innovation leading to business model, right? Or it could simply be a substitution story. But just think of an Uber, right? cab hailing services have been around for years, right? But Uber kind of used technology and kind of changed the service delivery model, right? For something that we are all used to, right? It's not an innovation in terms of that, okay, you when you need a cab, you kind of hire a cab. But the way this was delivered and the way technology was used, that was the innovation, right? So innovation is absolutely critical. Second thing, in the whole journey, we tend to forget that at the end of the day, there has to be unit economics needs to kind of work out, right? And what do you mean by unit economics? You need to understand in your business or in the kind of services that you are trying to deliver, what is the unit economics? What is the per unit cost? And how to value your business in terms of per unit cost. It could be on a per product basis, it could be on a per transaction basis, it could be a per hour basis. There could be multiple unit mechanics, right? But you need to be very, very conscious of, in your business model, what is the unit economics? And for that unit economics, what is the cost per unit? And what is the revenue per unit, right? So that clarity of thought is absolutely critical for any entrepreneur. Obviously, you need to have a vague idea of what kind of investments that you need for today's needs as well as needs over the next couple of years. So that's also very important. People say, hey, I don't know how much money I would need. But if you really don't know, then how does the investor who intends to invest behind you would know, right? So you need to have some things, project, set goals. I will be, today if I have revenues of X, tomorrow I would have revenues of whatever XYZ dollars. And what do you need, what kind of investment that needs to go in to get to this starting a business which has maybe 5 cyclists to 250 cyclists? What's the kind of investment that needs to go in, right? That vision you need to have, right? And of course, keep in mind the key to success will be on 2 parameters. Either it will be innovation led or it will be execution led. Either you need to have a model where you will continuously have innovation and you will stay ahead of the curve, or it has to be execution led, that your execution will be so superior that others cannot catch up and kind of compete with you, right? And scale plays a role in both of the situations, right? And it's very important that you draw imagery. Now, when I was hearing Chidambaram's story, he was actually painting a picture. When we were hearing him, you could almost transport yourself into his journey, how he saw the scenery, imagery, Goa, Kasargod, Kanyakumari. That imagery is very important. You must be able to tell your story, because see, remember, there is innovation and entrepreneurship is going hand in hand, and you are telling your story to somebody else and saying, hey, invest behind me. For that to happen, you must be able to help that person with the imagery as to what are you trying to create. If you were in China and somebody said, hey, I want to start Didi, the best imagery would be to say, hey, I want to create an Uber equivalent in China. That's the imagery. So people have an image of what Uber does, and then you tell them the story that this is what I'm trying to do. Makes it much more easier. Sometimes it's not possible, but to the extent you can have clarity of thought in terms of how you want to present it, right? That's very important. And when you decide to reach out to investors, obviously the first and foremost question that you have to ask yourself is, do you need an advisor or do you want to do it yourself, right? And both sides of the coin are fine, but you must be clear what is your expectation and where an external help can help you and where you don't need help, right? And of course, there are other things like little more technical stuff in terms of what rights do you give investors, how much money do you raise from them, what are the kind of exits that they will seek. Please bear in mind, right, when an investor comes in, even before they come in, they are thinking of an exit. So you must be very clear that if you invest behind me, how do I give you exit? That clarity of thought has to be there in your mind before you can go to investor, because even before they start, they're thinking of an exit, right? As Mr. Ghosh was talking about it some time ago, right? So that's really the kind of background that you must keep in mind. And then obviously the billion-dollar question is valuation, right? And everybody is interested in multi-billion-dollar valuations. We have had a lot of unicorns come in. We recently had Amarendra here. I think that it's a very important question. Please keep in mind that valuation is not a science. And for someone who is a practitioner of this, I'm telling you, valuation not a science, is more of an art. And there is a lot more imagery and gut feel involved in valuation than what the finance world actually has you believe, right? But keep in mind, valuation would be a function of a few things. The market opportunity, how big is that opportunity, how big that opportunity can get, right? And that's where the bag comes in. How big, hairy and audacious is your goal? What is your market share? I mean, are you aspiring to be a 5% player in that market, or are you aspiring to capture the entire market, right? So that's really the function of how valuations are done. What is the capital efficiency of the model, right? Are you going to look at a situation where $1 of investment leads to a $100 kind of return, or it's something else, right? So the capital efficiency of the model is very important. Think of a Flipkart. They are still, even in the Walmart scheme of things, they are still losing money. Every item a Walmart sells, or for that matter, even an Amazon sells, they're actually losing money, right? So the capital efficiency is very different, but it is a case of innovation as well as scale, right? And the process, and by virtue of that, they become so large that many people's life almost depends on Amazon, especially in the US. People can't live without it. So for Amazon to get capital is so easy, but really, they're not really making money, right? And of course, you have to think in terms of growth. Please keep in mind, growth rate is the single biggest determinant of valuation. It's not your profitability as much as your growth rate. So how fast can you grow is a very important determinant. And since the investor is interested in the exit mechanics, how fast will you be growing when the time the investor is thinking of an exit, right? That's also important. And of course, there's a financial market sentiments. If you try to raise money when there's a gloom and doom, there is elections around the corner, people are a little jittery, that's not a good time. And the last thing you must keep in mind is that you must have a plan B. And that's where many entrepreneurs actually fall. They only have plan A and they don't have a plan B. Please keep in mind that there was a time when Google wanted to sell itself to Alta Vista, guess what? For $1 million. They subsequently tried to sell themselves to Yahoo for $5 billion. Today, Google's market cap is north of $500 billion. And Yahoo's business has been sold to Verizon for $5 billion. So, world changes very fast. You can get rejected, and I'm sure somebody must be kicking himself for not having bought Google for $1 million when they could, right? So please be aware that rejection is part of the game, and you need to have a plan B. I don't want to take more of your time. I think we are already running short on time, Mr. Pharke. So thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Happy to take questions when we get a chance.